So today's lecture is teaching reading. So teaching reading. So please remember that teaching reading and listening are receptive skills. And therefore, you have to keep in your mind that when your learners read and listen, they get lots of information. So the aims of today's lectures are, by the end of the lecture, you will be able to have a better understanding of the reading techniques and also use sub-skills in your teaching practices and encourage your learners with various approaches. So what is the role of the teacher in reading, in teaching reading? So the teacher should be organizer, observer, feedback organizer, and a prompter. So organizer, we need to tell students exactly what their reading purpose is and give them clear instruction about how to achieve it and how long they have to do it. So observer, when we ask students to read on their own, we need to give them space to do so. While students are reading, we can observe their progress, since this will give us valuable information about how well they are doing individually and collectively, and will tell us whether to give them some extra time or to move to organizing feedback. So teacher is also a feedback organizer. When our students have completed the tasks, we lead a feedback session to check that they have completed the task successfully. We may start by having they compare, their answers in pairs by sharing their knowledge. Also, teacher as a prompter, when students have read a text, we can prompt them to notice language features in that text. We may also, as controllers, direct them to certain features of text construction, clarifying ambiguities. So, what reading skills should students acquire? So, they need to be able to scan the text for particular bits of information they are searching for. This skill means that they do not have to read every word and line. And therefore, please remember that scanning skill is really important. Students should be able to skim a text. Skimming is the next skill that our students should get, as if they were casting their eyes over its surface to get a general idea of what it is about. Whether readers scan or skim depends on what kind of text they are reading and what they want to get out of it. So, reading for detailed comprehension, whether looking for detailed information or language, must be seen by students something different from scanning and skimming. When looking for detailed, we want our students to concentrate on the, miniature of what they are reading. One of the teacher's main functions when training students to read is not only to persuade them for the advantage of skimming or scanning, but also to make them see that they are, that they read is vitally important. So what are the principles behind the teaching of reading? So reading is not a passive skill. In fact, it is an incredible active occupation. To do it successfully, we have to understand what the words mean, understand the arguments, and work out if we do agree with it. And also, students need to be engaged with what they are reading. If the students are not engaged with the reading text, not actively interested in what they are reading, it is less likely that they benefited from it. And therefore, it is really very important when you encourage your students to read or to reading, yes, and so that they are motivated, they are engaged in reading process. And also, you have to remember that students should be engaged to respond to the content of the reading text, not just to the language. It is very important to study reading text for the way they use the language, the number of, for example, paragraphs they contain, relative clauses, for example, linking words, and so on. But the meaning, the message of the text is just as important, and we must give our students a chance to respond. Also, we should allow them to express their feeling about the topic. How do you feel about, for example, the main character? What is your attitude to the, general idea of the text in general? Do you like this character? Why do you like? Why you don't like this character? This is, expressing their feelings and their attitudes toward the reading. And the last point is, please remember that the most interesting text can be undermined by asking boring and inappropriate questions. And therefore, please encourage your students, giving them relevant texts, relevant, stories. For example, if nowadays many students are not eager, in reading, and therefore encourage them, giving some very interesting, field of some topics. For example, if your teenagers like playing football, in this case, you can ask them to read about their favorite, for example, football player like Messi, or for example, some others. Or for example, if the girls are interested in cooking, in this case, you can ask them to read some recipes of their favorite, for example, meal. And in this case, when you personalize your teaching, I'm sure that you will, succeed in your teaching. Thank you for your attention.